So we have been through quite a bit of discussion about development, starting with that creation of the zygote, right? And then fertilization, and how important it was that the sperm were capacitated, the capacity to go and fertilize that oocyte. And remember that it's not one sperm that makes its way through all those layers. Multiple sperm have to provide a path for the one that finally gets to touch the plasma, the zona pellucida, and then the plasma membrane. Once that plasma membrane has been touched, then you have that slow and fast block to polyspermy, which is sodium ion depolarization, and then the calcium ions that are released from lysosomes that harden that plasma membrane so no more sperm get in. We talked about, what else did we talk about? We talked about the development of the neonate. We talked about the development of the fetus, from the embryo to the fetus. We talked about the development of the neonate, and then we branched into a discussion about chromosomes and how chromosomes have to get separated, right? You have to have this thing called disjunction during meiosis so that you do indeed end up with the right number of chromosomes in each oocyte or polar body or sperm, right? And we talked about non-disjunction and aneuploidy and all these kind of really common ones that we know about. We talked about Down syndrome. Now you know that the name came from a guy who really invested in taking care of people who have Down syndrome, who were being treated really poorly in his day. And we broached inheritance, and you have some conditions that are not Mendelian genetics, right? You have situations like this incomplete dominance, and an example of the incomplete dominance was sickle cell anemia, where you can have completely normal individuals, but they're carriers, and they can deliver those recessive genes to their children, and the children could be carriers, or they might end up producing a child with sickle cell disease. So we have normal sickle cell traits and then sickle cell disease. We looked at codominance and our blood types. We looked at multi-allele inheritance, which goes right along with codominance. We looked at polygenics, where you take multiple genes that are going to affect one trait. Polygenics, skin color, height, eye and hair color, body build, all those kinds of things that you can't, just absolutely block into a category are generally controlled by polygenics. Then we looked at pleiotropy. Do you remember this one? One gene controlling many traits. Albinism is one example of that, and Marfan syndrome is another. Oopsie. Here we go. We looked at epistasis. That is epistasis, where one gene overrides the expression of another gene. And my favorite way of describing that was for the Labrador retrievers in colors. So I have two yellow labs. They are both, of course, epistatic, right? Recessive gene controlling their coat color. And the bald-headedness, the X-linked expression of bald-headedness is controlled by an epistatic gene. Then we looked at sex-linked inheritance. We're all familiar with that now, I think. Hemophilia, color deficiency are examples of sex-linked traits. Which gene and which sex is it that carries these things mostly?
Female.
The female, right, because the female's got two X's, right? And females, by the way, can be color deficient. And they can have like 25% of the time. Because you have a male that's got X little c, a female with an X little c, you can end up with those two X's getting together. Same with pattern baldness. So women can develop baldness, yeah. We looked at X chromosome inactivation because one of our X chromosomes, vast majority of the population in this room have two X chromosomes, but one of them is deactivated, calling them bar bodies in our cells. We talked about the fact that not all of our mutations happen within the chromosomes, can happen from exposure to outside influences. So chemicals, alcohol, cigarette smoking, radiation, anything that can perhaps potentially change the sequence of base pairs or change a base in the base pairs. Down syndrome being an example of where we have aneuploidy or an odd number of chromosomes. Talked about how we have three different kinds, non-disjunction, which is literally every chromosome 21 got hooked up with another two chromosomes, translocation, a piece of chromosome 21 breaks off and attaches to another chromosome, or the mosaic, where in some cells you have 3, in some cells you don't. Some cells you just have 2. Interesting. Looked at Fragile X syndrome, where we have this increased spread of this particular triplet, the CGG, and when that happens, you can end up with significant influence, lots of influence on mental ability. Some autism may be a part of that, and usually learning abilities in general is what this Fragile X syndrome is going to cause. And that brings us to our discussion about aging and senescence, getting old. And you know, as everybody says, you want to get old, otherwise what's the alternative? My father used to say, don't get old, Hen. That was my nickname. I said, well, what's the alternative? You know, am I going to die young? I don't think so. So you want to live as long as you can, as well as you can, right? But these things do happen. Things happen as we get older. And some of the things that we can't avoid, maybe automobile accidents or accidents of any type, can take you before your time. Homicides, goodness knows, that happens plenty in this country. Suicides, AIDS, any number of conditions can take you before your time. My brother was probably the most health conscious of the 3 of us. I have 2 siblings, sister, brother, myself. He was very conscious of taking care of himself. And he and his new wife, 13 years together, they go out, have a lovely day on the property, come back in, he lays down to watch television with his favorite dog, Frida. Lisa's in the kitchen making dinner. She hears a rustling and a weird grumbling, flumbling sound. She looks over and he's on the floor, and he's not convulsing, but he's in this posture that is clearly referred to as cerebrate, oh, I forget the other part of it. But what happened was he had a massive brain hemorrhage. And it was so big that it pushed his medulla oblongata into the foramen magnum and killed his cardiovascular and respiratory control centers. And he was dead within 10 minutes. Crazy. You never know what's going to happen. And so, all of us are living the best we can, right? But in the meanwhile, things happen. Stuff happens to our bodies. We can develop cancers. We can get strokes like my brother. We can get diabetes. Any of these things happen because our organ systems don't last forever. They get tired. Some of the cells just give up the multiple mitotic division. And every time your cells divide, that DNA divides. And every time your DNA divides, there's an opportunity for a mutation. And those mutations can lead to cancer and stroke and diabetes and all those things. So every little bit that you get, be grateful for and keep on, right? Keep on, keep on, keep on. Want to try and get rid of the stress. What does stress do to you? Stress is bad for you.
Easier said than done.
I know, but what's the hormone that comes from stress?
Cortisol.
Cortisol. Cortisol's great in the short term, and I can't wait to get my first bout of cortisol, my first steroids to help my stiff hips. But I don't want to be on it forever because that is a depressant of the immune functions. So we want to avoid stress because cortisol is going to rear itself when you have stress. You want to make sure that you get good exercise. And whatever that exercise is for you is good enough. If it's walking in the mall, great, if that's what's working for you. If you have a place to get out in the woods, fabulous. Because it is clear, it is documented that when you engage with nature, you're going to live longer. And you're going to be happier for it too. Got to get some fresh air, hear some birds, listen to some trees rustle. Like literally sit down in the woods and just let go. It'll be so good for you. Good exercise improves your quality of life. Not only does it improve your endurance, but it improves your strength. And again, it's whatever exercise works for you. If you're running, that's great. Don't run on hard cement though. Run on dirt, something that gives a little bit so that it doesn't beat up your joints. Because if you're running on cement, your knees are going to talk about it. And at some point you might need new knees. So keep that in mind. If you're doing weight-bearing exercises, that's even the best, right? Remember in 1-2-31 where the primary exercise for best muscle development and weightlifting? Yep. Yeah. Make sure you get some resistance exercise, right? And what do I mean by resistance exercise? Again, walking on uneven ground so that you're stretching your tendons, stretching your ligaments, challenging your muscles a little bit. And you don't have to kill yourself, you know? Maybe it's a mile walk one day, and then you add another quarter mile in a week or two, and then you keep building on that as much as you can get out there and do it. Time-wise, of course, is a biggie. You have to carve the time out for it, especially at your stage in life, because you got a lot going on. You're in school, you're in work, you got home, you got family, but carve some time out for yourself. Really good for you. Yeah. Remember that, as I was just saying, the number of times that our cells have to replicate are going to add up. Those small mutations are going to add up. You got these free radicals that are floating around all over in your body. What vitamin are you going to take to deal with your free radicals?
Vitamin C.
Vitamin E.
E?
E.
I said C.
Vitamin E.
E.
E is your vitamin. It's your gather up your free radicals. What are free radicals?
Atoms with unpaired electrons.
Yeah, these little hydrogen ions, electrons floating around. Take care of those. Want to make sure that you don't have your lymphocytes going after your own tissues. This thing that I was just diagnosed with apparently is an immune condition, so my body is going after my body in the form of inflammation. I'm going to be rocking and walking really soon. This is the strangest genetic condition I've ever heard about. It's called progeria. Have you ever heard of it? Yeah, so people that have progeria accelerate their aging process really, really rapidly. And it is a mutation of this LMNA gene. It's autosomal dominant, but here's the thing, nobody in their family necessarily has the history of it. And so it's gotta be a genetic mutation in that dominant gene that leads to this process, where these individuals are, you know, they're only 12, 13 years old, but they look like they're 70, 80, 90 years old. Progeria. Kind of strange. Not carried by the parents.
I heard of it, just didn't know the name.
Yeah, progeria. A bizarre thing. Natural selection. When do we believe in natural selection? Do we believe in it? Yeah, I do. Because the selection process produces or eliminates conditions. For natural selection to work, though, it has to happen to the reproductive cycle. Right? You have to be able to pass those genes on to the next generation in order for natural selection to work. It doesn't just happen in this you and your family. I mean, it happens in populations. A great example of natural selection in a population, I don't know if I shared this with you, several years ago in Oregon, there's a little green frog that is in one pond beating the odds. You know, there are bullfrogs introduced. They're very aggressive. And these little green frogs were being decimated by the bullfrogs. All around the state and in other states, I'm sure. Bullfrogs are really aggressive. But in this one little pond, these little green frogs are excelling. They're increasing their numbers. And so they Oregon State sent some PhD students out to do some research. They brought these little green frogs back into the lab, and they tested their reaction time compared to little green frogs from other regions and compared to other frogs. And these little green frogs from this particular pond have a faster reaction time than little green frogs in other ponds. And the reason is because of some genetic mutation that gave them the ability to jump away and get away from those bullfrogs just a split second faster. And they avoided the bullfrogs' jaws and were able to live another day and reproduce. And that's really how natural selection works. It works on populations and over time being passed down through those genes. Like this says, genes for Alzheimer's, arthrosclerosis, colon cancer, etc. They only work on those individuals. This is not something that's passed through the ovary and the testes. It's the sperm and the egg that are going to carry the genetic information from one generation to the next and create influenza population. So that's all about. You know, interestingly enough, now I forgot to look up the latest statistics for life expectancy, but it's probably hasn't changed a whole lot since 21. It might have risen a slight amount, but this is all like COVID era numbers. You can see the decline in 2020 from 21. So girls 81, females 80, males 77, males 78. Lifespan might reach 122. Have you heard of anybody that's like, well, I remember seeing just recently some woman who's 114 and she's still really spicy. She's got her wits about her. She's doing great. Yeah, and then they talk about biological death and biological death versus clinical death. What's the difference? The difference is that you have cerebral activity, reflexes, heartbeat, and respiration. You're lacking them, that's a clinical death. Biological death would be where we're not talking about the brain death necessarily, but the heart stops. And once the heart stops, then of course, eventually, the brain won't be able to do work because it's not going to get its oxygen and get rid of it.
But we can keep them alive.
But you can keep them alive, exactly right. So that's the end, guys. So what I want to tell you is, because I am aging, you have so much ahead of you, and it's really exciting for you, and I'm delighted to have met you and spent some time with you. When you get older, the things that you're worried about now, you're not going to give a shit about. This is true. You start to let go of some stuff because it's silly to hang on to it because it's all wearing on you. And so age is a benefit in starting to let go of some of the baggage. Yeah, you, as we say at home, you develop a severely dislocated give up. Right. So I wanted to share with you my aging process. So I was born on January 22nd, 1954.
Happy early birthday.
Thank you. Remember me telling you I was born by cesarean section, so Mom always told me that she thought I was a Capricorn, but I ended up being an Aquarian. So I was supposed to be born a few days earlier, right? I was just twisted up, transverse presentation. So they tried to position me and they got me in the right place, and then I just snuggled right back in. So my father was Carl Friedrich Steinbach. He was a veterinarian. Dorothy Mary Besant, she was a British children's nurse that my father met during World War II while he was stationed in London. And she was working in London at a hospital called Great Ormond Street, which is a internationally renowned children's hospital in London. So they met, they fell in love, they got married, and then the rest is history. A couple of just snaps of my life. This is my sister Robin. She's nearly 9 years older than me. My brother Kurt, K-U-R-T, and myself sitting in front of the fireplace that my father built in the house that he built. You can see just little snippets of what I looked like. This was my sister with her first horse, and of course my introduction to him began my love of horses. This is one of our Christmas card pictures. So my pop, and my mom, and my siblings. I think this is actually my brother, but that's okay, because the nose. He had more of a pug nose than I did. Yeah. My father was he's an incredibly talented man. He had, of course, a veterinary degree, and he had a practice that was a good enough practice that he supported a family of 5. Mom stayed home, worked, did the homework, and he, in the early days, was an amateur photographer, and so he took a lot of pictures. And that's me, and me, and me, and me. This was a fun day because it was summer, and he said, "Come on, I want to take some pictures of you." So let's get you dressed. And he puts me in wool. Wool sweater, wool skirt. And then I have, unfortunately, I didn't capture it in this photo, but a doll. He said, grab a doll. So I have this little doll, it's called Ginger. It had mobile arms and legs, and it was bare ass naked. Such a silly, yeah. I'm about 9 years old here, and starting to go to horse shows with my riding instructor and his daughter. This is probably junior high, yeah, late 6th grade or junior high, 7th grade. I wanted to point out to you my nose. Look how beautiful that little nose is right there. My beautiful nose. So somewhere between here and here, I was jumping a hula hoop on the porch of our house, and I fell and I hit my nose on a step. I was too young to do anything about it. You know, you got cartilage, pretty much was still cartilage. So they left it and they didn't do anything about it. But you will start to see a change to this nose as we advance through the pictures. This was, I'm probably like 14 here, 13, 14. Twiggy was in vogue, and so I got Twiggy's haircut. So I loved Twiggy. And you might just see there's a lump starting to grow on that nose. Yeah, here it's starting to get a little more prominent, a little more twisted. So I'm growing out my Twiggy cut. This is, I think, like 10th grade. Getting rid of that Twiggy cut, starting to wear some eye makeup. The nose is getting bigger. I was obsessed. Now, you might notice that in this picture, my eyebrows are getting bushy. And so, rather than deal with the eyebrows, I grew bangs. So this is Christmas Day. At Christmas, we all sat around and watched everybody else open their present. So we handed the present out. I was usually the one that did that because I was the youngest. Give the present to the person, they'd open it, and we'd all go, oh, wow, and pass it around, we all look at it. And it took us like till 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Yeah, here we are with the bangs, my villager outfit, the nose, notice the nose. And then somebody told me, because I got my hair done, and she said, why don't you just pluck those hairs? What? Are you kidding? And of course they came right out, and they never grew back. That was so funny. But look at the nose. See that bump right there and a little crooked? Yeah. This is my senior picture. Again, the nose. I started to grow my hair, and I had long hair from age 17 to 40. I was, 17 to 40 years old. Does anybody know George Wallace? Have you ever heard of him? George Wallace, he was a Southern politician. I think he was the governor of Georgia. He was a phenomenal racist. Like literally, he wanted to segregate all the schools. He was just a horrible person. Somehow, I ended up at an event, and I got my picture taken with him. But this is to show you how long my hair got. I think I was 18 in this picture, wearing full makeup. Somewhere around 24, 25, in upstate New York. This was 1982 or 83 when I got my job at Harcum College as a full-time instructor in the vet tech program there. Notice the nose. Can you see how much it's grown and changed? Like all that bony structure? Yeah. And then, that's a terrible image. It's awfully blurry. But I met my husband in 1986. We got married in 88. There was my sister, my father, my mother, my brother, and my husband, who was really happy with the photographer. Can you tell? This is probably the best picture of us at the wedding. Jack's saying something to me, I don't know what. I loved his nose. I was like totally obsessed with noses. And by this point, I'd had my nose surgery. I had a double deviated septum So it wasn't just one, it was a double deviated septum. It was obviously, the reason why I never smelled anything really well, because I had 90% blockage in one nose and 70% blockage in the other nostril. But I got that fixed, and I actually had the surgery between my very first meeting with Jack and our first date. Our first date, I had a bandage on my nose, put the tip of my nose up, and a brace on the, yeah, that was our first date. Oh, let's see, I'm probably 36, 37 here. We were hosting little bike races in the park in Philadelphia. This is in 2003, 2004. So how old was I? 50 here? Yeah, and can you see the difference in the lack of wrinkles? Wrinkles. And also, something else that happens is your eyelids get droopy. Gravity affects your eyelids. And if some people actually, the eyelids occlude vision. They droop over so much that you can get them repaired. You can get them fixed. This was our first Labrador Retriever named Andy Toland. He came from guide dogs. He was the most cerebral, brilliant dog. Like literally a $20,000 dog, because he was raised and then he went through the professional training and he was ready to be assigned, and he was actually working with his his visually impaired person. And then he had epileptiform seizure, and they released him because they don't want guides seizing on them out on the sidewalk. He never had another one, so it was all stress. He was so serious that he took his work really seriously, and it was too much for him. He couldn't cope. So he ended up with us, and oh my God, I loved that dog. He was beautiful.
Black labs are the best. Black labs are
I
the
love
best.
the blacks, yeah. We have all yellows, but there's me too. So let's see, this is in the house my brother built for my mother. We are all together because my mother is in hospice. So we are waiting for my mom to pass. And she died in 2005, 2004, so I'm 51, 51.
You said 50.
51, yeah, so I was 40 something. All right, I'm losing track of my simple arithmetic is difficult. So myself, my brother, and my sister Robin. My sister Robin is now 80 years old, of course, deceased. And myself, did you do the arithmetic?
No.
How old am I?
75.
20.
I'm 71, I'm closing on 72.
I'm so confused, I thought.
Yeah, I was 54,
Oh.
born in 54. This is my 60th birthday with my brother. Isn't he handsome? A handsome guy. My friends put a party on for me, it was really sweet. And I'm probably 64 or 5 in this photo. And this is my love of my life, of all living creatures. This guy right here. And that's all I really want to do. And that's it, gang. Yeah. So to make it